Hey, hello, everybody. Lucas Haneman here. Welcome to this week's episode of Guitar Tone Tuesday. Recently on the show, we've talked about Martin. We've had a Martin 00015 SM on the show. And I wanted to talk about a company that kind of came from Martin under very interesting circumstances. Because this guitar right here is a Sigma. This is a Sigma 0045SV, which definitely resembles a Martin guitar that we have probably seen before. A Martin 0045. This is a gorgeous guitar. Wow. I mean, look at all this. Blingy, 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 blingy everywhere. I don't know if you guys can see that, but there's beautiful abalone style appointments everywhere. Like everywhere. It's very nice. Very, very nice. Now, before I get into this guitar in particular, I want to talk a little bit, very briefly, about the interesting history of Sigma guitars. The circumstances that led to Sigma are very fascinating to me as a player. In the late 60s, there were a lot of companies coming out that were basically replicating Martin guitars. They were replicating Martin guitars, and they were doing it in such a way where they were taking some nods from Martin guitars and maybe getting a little bit too close to what Martin enjoyed doing themselves. And so Martin then decided that they were going to compete with their competition. They decided to come out with a company called Sigma in the year 1970 that was making essentially Martin copies licensed by Martin in Japan to start. And these early Sigma guitars have a big following. Guitars like the DR5, the DM5, the DR7, the DM7, D for Dreadnought, R or M for Rosewood or Mahogany, 5 or 7, for the level of the appointments. And I believe it was a pretty wide-ranging scope, from very simplistic guitars all the way up to very highly adorned guitars like this. Now, the first two generations of Sigma were like, they're very highly regarded among collectors. The first generation has what they call the spatula headstock, and then by sometime in 1976 or so, they changed the headstock shape to be what we know as the Sigma S style headstock shape, and the features of the guitars became closer to the Martin, the Martin guitars that they were derived from. And meanwhile, at all this time, the Sigma guitars were being made in Japan. Eventually, by the second generation, some of these guitars actually had solid tops, and they would have a higher model number designation because of that. By the late 70s and early 80s, some of these guitars even had all solid wood, but also by that time, some of the production had moved over to Korea, which at that time was not what it is now. Korean production is seen as actually a very good thing now with guitars. Wasn't quite there at that time. Throughout the 80s, Sigma, some of the quality control did start to dwindle eventually by the time you got to Gen 3, Gen 4 guitars. Lots of the Gen 4 guitars actually had electronics, and they were kind of a thinner body guitar, much less like what we know of as a traditional Martin style guitar. Now, meanwhile, all these guitars were being sent to the Martin factory that opened in 1850 in Pennsylvania, and that was the original Martin factory, became the inspection house for Sigma guitars. So that's pretty cool. And then by the time we got towards the end of the 90s, Martin started to kind of disassociate with Sigma. By the year 2006, Sigma was all but out of the Martin guitar catalog. And then in about 2010, 2011, they were relaunched under a company called AMI, which is a German company. So these guitars are now being, sold again all over the world. In the States, I believe they're being sold under a different brand name now, but in Canada and in Europe, they're being sold as Sigma guitars. Now, this guitar is 0045. This belongs to a student of mine, student named Barry, who is constantly surprising me. He's always like, "Oh yeah, I'll bring over a guitar," and he's constantly surprising me because he has a lot more guitars than I ever thought he did. You know what I mean? Um, I've got some friends like that. Always surprising me with guitars, and very graciously lending them out for videos and all that kind of stuff. So that's very cool. So thanks, Barry, for this. I gotta say, this guitar has a solid Sitka spruce top. It has laminated rosewood back and sides, but it doesn't sound like it. For a double O, it's just 12 for a double O. Wow. It sounds very big, very beautiful, very, very sweet. Now, I should mention that this is from the current era of Sigma, so the AMI Sigma. I believe this guitar was from about 2013 or so, when this particular model was made. But it's a very beautiful instrument, and they also do an S0045, which the S designates that the whole instrument is solid. Now this one is not that. So I believe this guitar sells, I'm not sure, a little bit below $1,000 for sure, brand new. But it sounds really nice. And I mean, just look at the thing. It's so beautiful. It's got an aging toner, Sitka spruce top, rosewood board, rosewood bridge. As I say, rosewood back and sides, white plastic binding, a very, very comfortable V-neck on this guitar. And as we've seen a lot on Guitar Tone Tuesday lately, or at least, in the last little while, we've seen a couple of these guitars with slotted headstocks. It's nice. It's definitely a nice departure, right, from the standard thing. Now, I'm going to come up into standard tuning for a second. And I'm just going to play a little bit, maybe something more kind of fingerstyle-y. Well, I gotta say, you know what? the price of a guitar, the woods that the guitar is made from, it doesn't dictate how inspired we feel by the instrument. The neck on this guitar inspires me. It feels very nice. And though the guitar doesn't have as much low end as some guitars, I mean, you gotta think about what it is. It's also a double O. This guitar inspires me. I'm playing different things that I wouldn't usually play because it feels different. It's a 12 fret double O with a nice big chunky V neck, And on the used market, you could find this guitar for just a few $100s, And it's very cool. And I never really gave Sigma a chance. When I was a kid and I had friends who had old Sigmas, I don't know, I never really liked them. I never really thought to even care about them. But I had a student recently who had a Sigma Dreadnought. I believe it was from the 80s or from the 90s. And man, that guitar sounds so good. It sounds so good. I believe it's one of the all-solid Sigmas, but it sounds really good. And I never really gave them a chance. And to me, Guitar Tone Tuesday is really about giving things a chance. Things that we might not think about all the time. Obscure brands. And I know Sigma's not really an obscure brand, but it's not like the brand that we think of every single day, right? Most of us. But I do want to know, let me know if you have any experience with Sigma guitars and if you've maybe owned a model similar to this, be it an older generation or the current generation. The older generations of Sigmas were mainly grand concerts and dreadnoughts, and now they've branched out. They're doing some parlor guitars and some different sizes, So, how about some blues before we go? Wow. Yeah, I love it, man. Sigma 0045SV. Nice guitar, man. Nice guitar. Now, I want you guys to let me know in the comment section below, as I say, do you have any experience with Sigma guitars? What are your thoughts on Sigma guitars? Were you around in the heyday of Sigma? Have you ever owned one of these things? Do you have any friends who own one of these things? Let me know. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, give the video a thumbs up if you liked it, and we will see everybody again on next week's episode of Guitar Tone Tuesday. Bye-bye!